Today I'd like to share an indigenous Khoi legend with you. The story dates back to the 1400s and it speaks of a lone Khoi woman who lived in the Constantiaberg Mountains in a cave called the Elephant's Eye Cave. These mountains overlook a lush wetland where this Khoi woman would journey to with her cattle. Her cattle would graze on the banks of this wetland and she would bathe in its fresh water. On one particular day, when she was making this journey down from her cave to the wetland, she encountered a group of Portuguese sailors. These sailors assaulted her and murdered her, and her spirit remained at the wetland seeking revenge. Her spirit sought revenge for her murder and for her people, and she did this by claiming the life of 1 or 2 young men every year. The story was so impactful that it still circulates amongst surrounding communities up until today. We know this because some men from these communities are still too afraid to enter the water of the wetland because of the fear of the spirit of the princess. The Khoi legend was so profound that this wetland was named after her. It was named Princess Vlei. Vlei being a colloquial term for wetland, and she was given the title of princess because of the power that she held within the space. Today, I'm privileged enough to be working at the legendary Princess Vlei to restore the space, to be a custodian of the space, and to facilitate custodianship within the surrounding communities. These communities are under-resourced, predominantly people of color, and have been previously disadvantaged by apartheid. With this being said, I'd like to share a bit more about the more recent history of Princess Vlei and how it reached the point where it needed restoration and custodians. During apartheid, an act called the Group Areas Act was passed. This act spatially divided South Africa according to race. People of color were forcibly removed from their homes and were forced to live in undesirable and often inhumane spaces within the country and within the city. Along with the spatial segregation of living spaces, natural spaces experienced the same fate. So rivers, beaches, parks, and wetlands were allocated to people of color, and by law, they were only allowed to use those spaces. Like most spaces associated with Black and brown bodies, they were often underfunded and experienced neglect by the apartheid government. Princess Vlei was one of these spaces. Princess Vlei was allocated to people of color and more specifically to colored people. Colored being a colloquial or term used for mixed race people in South Africa. Regardless of the fact that people of color had very few spaces to enjoy, they made the most beautiful memories at a space called Princess Vlei. Families celebrated first birthdays at the Vlei. Baptisms were celebrated at the Vlei. Children learned how to swim in the fresh water of Princess Vlei. Grandchildren taught their grandchildren how to catch fish there. Unfortunately, because Princess Vlei did not receive the funding necessary for environmental and recreational management, it experienced severe neglect and slowly became occupied by gangsterism, drug use, and the illegal dumping of harmful waste. This then led to the city of Cape Town being willing to sell the land to private developers. These developers wanted to build a shopping mall at Princess Vlei. Fortunately, the community found out, they organized themselves, and a protest movement was started. People from all walks of life came together because they knew the value of the wetland and the importance of the princess. Multiple voices stood in solidarity against this development. Local members from the community, the schools, politicians, scientists, indigenous leaders, and religious leaders, even Desmond Tutu, were against this development. The protesting took on multiple forms. People stood with placards alongside the main roads adjacent to Princess Vlei. There were protest picnics, And there was also protest planting, where thousands of indigenous plants were planted by local community members, plants that had been lost both during apartheid and post-apartheid. After years of protesting and perseverance, the people won, and the city scrapped the mall development. In 2015, the site was declared a biodiversity agreement site, which basically means the government was now recognizing its conservation and recreational value. In 2020, Princess Fley was declared a provincial heritage site, and the cultural significance and the legend of the Khoi princess was finally being acknowledged. So why am I sharing this story with you, and why is this a story worth knowing? Because it teaches us about the concept of custodianship, which is an indigenous way of connecting to land and to water and to the earth as a whole. Indigenous people have interconnected relationships with natural spaces that they call home. They are the founders of what it means to care for our natural spaces and our environment. Currently, Indigenous people are at the forefront of protecting 80% of our global biodiversity. I draw from the lessons of Indigenous people as an environmentalist and also from my own ancestors. I use these ways of connecting to land and to water as a person of color and as an advocate with the access to safe environmental spaces for all. My work at Princess Fley includes environmental education, where I work with local schools from underprivileged communities to establish fynbos ecosystems or gardens, and also to reconnect these children back to the Fley. I do this by teaching them about the threads that bind them directly to the land and to water and to natural spaces. And this is through their ancestry. I teach them about the legend of the Khoi princess and how they are connected to her because of their ancestors. I also share some of the lessons that the Khoi princess has to teach us about how to care for land and water and for Princess Fley. One of the schools that I've been working with is situated on the Cape Flats, a space associated with gang violence, poverty, and the symptoms of apartheid town planning. Lavender Hill, a neighborhood with little to no indigenous vegetation, now has a thriving fynbos ecosystem planted by our young guardians of Princess Fley, a project that I started in 2018. This garden now has Cape Dwarf chameleons, mole snakes, sunbirds, and all sorts of pollinators as regular visitors and inhabitants of their school grounds. For anyone who knows Lavender Hill, you'll know that this is an out-of-world experience. My work at the Fley also includes restoration, where I am employed as the restoration project manager, which sounds glamorous, but initially was not. I spent an entire year cleaning the Fley. I picked up dirty nappies, used condoms, general waste, and other unmentionable items. I did this with a team of about 8 people from the local community, and we had 109 hectares to cover. It was exhausting, nauseating, it was smelly, but it was rewarding. After our mass cleanup, I then began facilitating the restoration of endangered vegetation at Princess Fley. And I did this by inviting local communities and local schools to do the planting of endangered fynbos. They also removed alien vegetation like Port Jackson. To date, the community and these schools have planted well over 25,000 indigenous plants at Princess Fley. These people are single-handedly rehabilitating the Fley, which is the essence of custodianship. My hope is that through consistency and sharing the work and the word of custodianship at Princess Fley, that I will reignite the sense of care that exists within all of us for natural spaces. With this being said, I implore you all to take on a challenge to care and channel your inner Khoi princess. I've put together a 3-step process that will turn this message into action. Step 1 is find a space that you love and care for. This could be your backyard, it could be a park, a wetland, or a pot plant. Step 2, sit with this space or with this pot plant and figure out why you care for it. Why do you love this space and what connects you to it? Then figure out what the space needs from you in order to be cared for. Step 3, take action to care. And do this in community. Find a local NGO or friends group, community members, family, friends, and then just get to it. Embody the fierce, protective spirit of the Khoi princess and simply care. Thank you.